Welcome all, welcome to this lecture of Object-Oriented Programming 1. Today we'll continue with the Unit 6, Exception Handling. And let me show the disclaimer, then I'll start the session. Okay, so let us start. So we started with exception handling. We saw what are different kinds of runtime errors. We saw how basically an exception gets generated. For example, an arithmetic exception gets generated by dividing by 0. Then we saw how we can handle those exceptions, right? Then we saw this exception types. We saw different types of exception where we saw that throwable is the main class, which is inheriting object, and out of which the exceptions are there and errors are there, right? And in exceptions also there are specifically runtime exceptions, which are basically unchecked exception. These are unchecked exception, and there are a set of other exceptions, right, which are basically what? Checked exceptions. The checked exceptions basically focus on what? The checked exceptions uh, have to be put in try catch, and the unchecked exception, if are not put in try catch, that is okay. So these are some of the exception types that we saw. We saw how to make use of throw keyword and what is the meaning of throws. Okay. Then we saw various types of unchecked exceptions, right? And then we also saw some of the types of checked exceptions. Now we have to let's see what is the difference between throw and throws. Okay. So see, throw basically is used when you want to explicitly throw an exception, right? You want to throw your own exception or the exception with your own specific method. At that time, you use throw keyword. Throws is in fact not a explicit throwing of an exception, but it is used to declare that an exception can be thrown by a method. It is used to do what? It is used to declare that a method can throw an exception. That's what it declares. Okay. So that's the difference. Here it is used to actually throw an exception, and here it is used to declare that an exception can be thrown by a method. Okay. So this is how you declare it. See, if you are using it in a method, then you say throw new and exception class name and your message. Okay. This is what? This is the class name of exception. And what is this one? This one is your message that you want to pass for that exception. And for throws keyword, you will say that this particular method m, which returns nothing, but it can throw an arithmetic exception. That's what you say. What do you say? That this method m can throw an arithmetic exception. Okay. Similarly, checked exceptions cannot be propagated using throw only. Okay. So if you are throwing, see, this is a runtime exception. Arithmetic exception is a runtime exception. So see, if you are declaring that it can throw an arithmetic exception, and if you don't declare, that's fine because it's a runtime exception. That's allowed. But you cannot propagate a checked exception like this. So you cannot say uh, that a method m throws unchecked exception. Let's say, for example, IO exception, right? So basically, checked exception need to be propagated with throws. Okay. Let me show you. Which are the checked exceptions? See, these are some of the checked exceptions, like class not found exception, right? So if you want to write something like this, a method void one, okay, and here you are saying throw new class not found exception brackets. Okay, let's write it like this. We'll write it like this. If I say that there is a method A, and it, it says that throw new class not found exception. Let's say class name is ABC, right? So now see, this method is throwing what? This is basically a checked exception. If it's a checked exception, you need to propagate it. You need to declare over here that this method A can throw. So that's what you declare by saying throws. So you say this method throws the class not found exception. So here is what you declare, right? So simply throw enough alone is not enough, to particularly use a checked exception. It also needs throws. If this throw new class not found exception is not put inside try catch, say if it has been put inside try catch, if it has been put inside try catch, then there is no issue in that. Then there would be not be an issue. But try catch, if try catch is not there, then you need to declare that this method throws this checked exception. That's a major difference. Throw is followed by an instance. So you say throw and then you create a new instance saying new exception name and this. Throws is followed by a class. See, here it is written as throw, but it is throws. See, void m throws class name. So throws is followed by class name, whereas throw is followed by an instance. Okay. Throw is used within the method. Inside the method, you use throw. Okay. Inside the method, you use what? Throw. But throws is used with the method signature. So you use it in the method signature. In the method signature, you use throws. Okay. And you cannot throw multiple exceptions. But you can declare to throw multiple exceptions like this. You can say public void method. This method throws more than one exceptions, like it may throw IO exception, it may throw SQL exception, it may throw any one out of it, right? So you can declare multiple exceptions with throws, but you cannot throw multiple exceptions using a single throw keyword. That is not possible. Okay, so these are main differences between throw and throws. Now you understood where we use exactly the throw and where we use exactly the throws. Okay. Now, see, check this out over here. Here, in this class, we say class circle with exception. We have a radius variable, instance variable. and in this constructor we are passing a double value, right? That double value is being set, is sent over here to the set radius method, which basically takes a double value, and now it can throw an illegal argument exception. It can throw what? It can throw an illegal argument exception, right? And if we say new radius is greater than or equal to 0, we say that if new radius is greater than or equal to 0, then radius is equal to new radius. Otherwise, you say throw new illegal argument exception, radius cannot be negative. So we check whether the radius is greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0. If not, then we throw this illegal argument exception with our own message. Right. Now, so see here it is saying that it throws illegal argument exception. So you here in this example we use throw also and throws both. Got it? And now see here we are not, this set radius is being called inside the what, inside the constructor, right? So now what we do over here, in this test circle with exception inside main method, we use the try catch block. So this does not give us any error because we have put this call inside try catch block. Which call? We put the constructor call inside try catch block. So we create a circle with value plus 5, then we can find its area. Okay. If we try to create a circle with a negative value, right, it would throw an exception, and from here directly the exception would be thrown and it would be caught over here, and that message would be printed. Got the point? This is how we make use of throws and how we put the method or the constructor that calls the method that is throwing an exception into try catch. Okay. Now there is the finally clause. Finally clause is always executed regardless of whether an exception occurred or not. This is very important point. Even if the exception does not occur, the control goes through finally. So see, here you have try statements, right? Suppose an exception occurs, the control goes to the catch block, executes the catch block. From here itself, the execution stops of try block. Catch block executes, then the control goes to finally block and it executes, and then it exits out of try catch block after finally. Okay, this is how it happens. But if you don't have exception, then what occurs? We execute the try statements. Okay, statements inside the try block gets executed. Now, since there is no exception occurring, there is no need of going here. So what happens? From here, directly the control goes to what? It goes to final, and this finally executes. Okay. This is what happens when you use finally clause. Okay. So why do we need finally clause? See, there may be some code that may be need to be executed regardless of there is an exception occurring or not. So the finally clause is there, right? So even if your control goes into catch block, and also it will execute finally. Even if it does not go into the catch block, then also it goes into the finally. The code in the finally block is executed under any circumstances. Okay. So even if the exception is thrown and it is caught, still, and even if there is no exception, final case statement is executed. Okay. So see, there might happen something that that a statement would cause an exception in the try block, which is caught in the catch block, but it might happen that there would be a exception thrown in the catch block itself, right? So see, if one of the statement causes an exception that is not caught in any catch blocks, then also see, it's like this. You have a try catch block, you have a try, right? Let me just you have a try block, and at some point you generate the exception, right? So all the code after it gets skipped, and the catch block. Let's suppose there are multiple catch blocks, and none of it work. Then what happens? Then in that case, basically, the try catch block works. Sorry, the finally block works. In this case, finally block works. Okay. So what would happen? Suppose the exception is thrown and it does not get this exception does not get caught over here, does not get caught over here. So at least it goes through finally. Even though it is not caught, at least it goes through finally. Okay. And then the exception is passed where? Then the exception is passed to the caller of that particular method in which the exception occurred. Okay. See, the best part of the finally clause is that the finally block executes even if there is a return statement prior to reaching the finally block. Even if there is a return statement given in try catch block, still the finally block will surely execute. So that's why the name given is finally. Now there is something called as rethrowing of exceptions. Right? Java allows an exception handler to rethrow the exception if the handler cannot process the exception, or simply wants let its caller to be notified of the exception. For example, if an exception gets generated over here in try-catch block and it is passed to catch, but the catch cannot handle it, so it might perform some operations before it, and then it can again throw it out. That's it. It might happen that you are catching a specific exception, but an exception object did not generate of that kind. So then what you do? What should do? Then you should have some operation. You do some operation, and then you rethrow that picture out exception. So here the statement throw inside the catch, it rethrows the exception to the caller so that the other handlers in the caller get a chance to process the exception. Okay. Caller means who is calling this particular try catch block. Okay, or using this try catch block in a method call. Now, if you go ahead, then also you can see that there is something called as chained exceptions, right? Throwing an exception along with another exception forms a chained exception. Guys, you may need to throw a new exception with additional information along with the original exception. This is called as chained exception. So how you do it? Check this out. This is a chained exception demo. Which calls method 1 inside main method. Okay. go to method 1, method 1 does what? It calls method 1 calls method 2. What does that method 2 do? Check this out. If we go to method 2, we are saying throw new exception, new info from method 2. Okay, so this will throw an exception and it will be caught over here, right? And then what you do, you say here throw new exception. See, here you had already said throw new exception. Then you are again saying here throw new exception, and this is new info from method 1, and you are adding this EX which was caught over here as the base exception. Right. So what happens is, see, when running this method, this main method, the control comes over here. The control comes over here. It calls method 1. The control comes over here. It calls method 2. Calls what? Method 2. As soon as the control comes over here, executes this, right? It throws a new exception which gets caught over here. And again, this also throws a new exception which basically gets caught over here in this case. Here, if you print the whole stack trace, you will come to see that new info from method 1, that is the main exception, right? And method 1, so basically was called first in the stack. So that's why it appears first. But you can see from method main, method 1 was called. You see, method 1 is on top, then comes main method, right? Got the point? Why method 2 is not shown? Why method 2 is not shown? Can anyone say? Yes. See, because method 2 throws an exception which already got caught inside catch. So if the exception gets caught, it means the exception has been handled. Now there is no need of throwing it again. But if you are explicitly throwing it again as a, adding it as a base exception to another exception, then the stack trace will not show you this method to name, because the exception thrown from that was already handled by this catch block. It was caught, it means once the exception is caught, it means it is handled. It's as simple as that. So that's why what happens is, here you have this method 1 which is being halted due to this exception, and method 1 was called from main method. You can see that, right? And what's the name of the exception coming? The message new info from method 1. New info from method 1. You see that? So that is called a chain exception. Now, what if you want to make your own exception classes? Suppose you want to declare your own exception class, then what would you do? Then you would do something like this. Either you do what? You extend the exception class. There is a class invalid radius exception extends exception. Okay, right? You could extend the exception class to in order to declare your own exception class. For example, here you are saying invalid radius exception. So see here what happens? Here you are making your own class, exception class, which is extending an exception. Yeah. And inside its inside its constructor, we are passing this radius, and you are invoking the super constructor, which is of exception class, and then you are passing your own message saying invalid radius. And then you say this dot radius is equal to radius. We are doing what? We are invoking a superclass constructor also, and you are assigning it to a variable value. Okay. So this is your own exception class, and you can now say what? You can now say if there is some invalid radius value entered by user, then you can say throw new invalid radius exception. You can say this. Okay. So that is all about exceptions. Okay, that is all about exceptions and exception types. So what did we learn in exceptions? Tell me. What all things do we learn? We learn basically the 5 keywords first: try, catch, throw, throws, right? Try, catch, throw, throws, and finally these are the keywords that we learned. Okay. Let me write it like this. What did you learn in exception handling? First is the keywords. Okay, that is try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. These are the keywords that you learned. Okay. Now, if I say what all things else did you learn, then you learned about exception types, right? You also learned about exception types. There are checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. These are the 2 types of exception types. Then you also learned how to create your own exception using extends keyword, right? Then you also learned about chaining of exceptions, chaining of exception, right? These also we learned. These are the things that we learned till now in exception. Okay. And so now let's go to the abstract classes. Okay. If you have any doubt in exceptions, you may ask. Otherwise, we'll go to abstract classes. So see, the abstract classes basically are a class that cannot be used to create objects. Sometimes you may want you may design a class that has got an incomplete implementation. In that case, you don't want other users to create its objects. Then you may declare it as an abstract class. Abstract class can contain abstract methods. Abstract methods means methods without any body. Okay. And which can be implemented in concrete subclasses. So if a class is abstract, then you cannot instantiate it, then it's of no use, right? But if you extend it into a subclass and then you implement that concrete method, then you can instantiate that subclass. So that would be useful case, Check this out. This is, see, what does this say? Class design should ensure that a superclass contains common features of its subclasses, right? And sometimes what happens, the superclass is so abstract that it cannot be used to create any specific instances, right? So such class is called as abstract class. And an abstract method cannot be contained in non-abstract classes. It can be only contained inside an abstract class. Okay. So if it's something like this, you are making a class. Let's say I have a class ABC. Okay. Now I have a public abstract method. Now see, abstract method means it does not have a body, not even empty. It cannot even have empty curly braces. No, this thing is also not allowed. You directly just simply declare it out. Put the semicolon after the method signature, that's it. So that becomes an abstract method. Means it does not have a body. What does it mean? It doesn't have a body. Okay. And now see, so what happens when you do something like this? Class ABC and public abstract void method. Now see, since you are having this method as an abstract method, it means it is not a body. It means that this class cannot be instantiated because it has got an incomplete method. So this class should be declared as an abstract class. What should it be declared as? It should be declared as an abstract class. Got the point? It should be declared as an abstract class. Okay. So make sure that an abstract method cannot be contained in a non-abstract class. And if you declare an abstract method in a non-abstract class and you don't implement it, so you have to make it an abstract class anyhow. And if a subclass of an abstract class, of an abstract superclass, if a subclass of an abstract superclass does not implement all of the abstract methods, then the subclass also must be defined as abstract. No. So in other words, a non-abstract subclass extended from an abstract class, all the abstract methods must be implemented, right? So it's something like this. You have this class, let's say this is an abstract class, class A, and you have abstract void method A or method 1, This is abstract, and another also abstract void method 2. Okay, now see, abstract classes can have non-abstract methods. So if you say void method 3 and it has got some body, dot out dot println method 3, right? And now what you do is you make another class, say class B extends A, and it implements this void method 1, so putting in some code inside it. Even though if it puts an empty body, that's also fine. But now what happens? See, class, it's like something like this. This is class A, this is class B. And class B is extending from class A. The problem is that B is only implementing one abstract method here. B is only implementing one abstract method. It is not, this class B is not implementing this non-abstract method 2. So it means abstract method 2 is already inherited by this class B. Is already inherited by the class. So it means it has got, it has got abstract void method 2 over here. By default, it has got it. So if it is the case, then what happens is, then you need to declare this class also as abstract. You need to declare this class also as what? As the abstract class. Okay. Got the point? Now if you suppose have a class, something like this, class C extends A. Now if you implement both the methods, void method 1, let's say you just implement an empty body, okay, void method 2, right? Then also this class is valid. Even though you have empty bodies, then also it is not an abstract method, it is a valid method, and this code is valid. So now you don't need to make this class C as an abstract class. Why? Because it has implemented both the abstract methods that it inherited from class A. What the point? Class C has inherited two methods from class A, and it is extended from A, so it has implemented both the methods, as simple as that. So see, says the abstract class cannot be instantiated while using new operator, but you can still define its constructors and which are invoked by the constructors of its subclasses. For example, we make a class called figure class, which constructor of that figure class can be invoked from subclasses like rectangle or triangle or circle. So you can definitely make an abstract class which has got constructors, which has got concrete methods also. But even if you declare a single method to be abstract, that class becomes abstract. Okay. For a class to be concrete, there should be no abstract methods inside it. Any class that contains abstract methods must be abstract. Okay. It is possible to define an abstract class that doesn't contain an abstract method. That thing is also possible. You may define just a simple class to be an abstract. And it's fine if it doesn't have any abstract methods inside it. Even if there are concrete methods, that's also fine. This class may be just used what? This class may be just uh, used to be made as a base class for defining subclasses. Okay. And a subclass can override a method from its superclass to define it as abstract. A subclass can override a method from its superclass to define it as an abstract or to actually implement it. Okay. But this is unusual because it is useful when the implementation of the method in the superclass becomes invalid in subclass. Okay. So see, a subclass can also be abstract. It's okay. It's fine if you make a subclass also an abstract. Okay. And even if you can even make a subclass abstract, even if this superclass is also concrete. Okay. For example, object is a concrete class, but its subclasses like figure may be abstract. Right. So check this out. Here we are defining an abstract class figure. It has got two properties, a constructor and an abstract method. So only due to this abstract method we can say that this class has to behave as an abstract class. It means you cannot say something like this. Where f equal to new figure and then provide some values. You cannot say something like this. Why you cannot say, why you cannot use new operator on it? Because the class is abstract. Because the class is like this using new keyword. That is not allowed. That's the point. So see, this class is abstract because it has got an abstract method. Otherwise, it has got variables also, constructors also, and it may have some other concrete methods also. Now see, we say class rectangle extends figure. And here we have this constructor, and also we override the area method basically, which was what? Basically, which was abstract in the parent class figure. Got the point? Here we are implementing this double area. Here we are implementing the area method. Here we are just declaring it as abstract method. So we are overriding that area method. Okay. So this is what is expected from a subclass. You implement the method that is basically abstract in superclass. That is what is expected from the subclass by a superclass. When the superclass is abstract and subclass is concrete. Check this out. There you have triangle class also, which also extends figure, and it has this triangle class has its own constructor which calls super constructor, which calls which one? Which calls the constructor for figure class. Okay, and it has got its own area implementation. Got the point? Now see, we test it. We say class abstract areas. Check this out. This is illegal. When we say f equal to new figure 10 comma 10, this is illegal. This is not allowed. But if you say something like this, rectangle R equal to new rectangle 9 comma 5, triangle B equal to new triangle 10 comma 8. Now if you say figure F, now see, you have declared what? You have declared a reference variable. You have declared a reference variable of type figure, which is an abstract class. So this is okay. Right. Now if you say figure F equal type figure class, right? Figure F is a reference variable of type figure class. And what is R? R is an object of rectangle class. So this is possible. Now, if it's a figure f dot area, what will happen? Figure f object, there is no object right now pointed by figure f in this statement. But if you say figure f dot area over here, it means figure f is pointing to the object by r, which we had created in this line. So when you say figure f dot area, right, it will call this object's area method. This rectangle 9 comma 5's area method. Similarly, we say figure f equal to t, then we say figure f dot area, so it will call the what? It will call the area method of this triangle object, triangle grass. Okay. So this is what you have to understand. The abstract class can be used to declare a variable, but not an object. But not an object using new operator. For that you only need concrete classes. So concrete subclasses like this, triangle, and concrete subclass like rectangle. Got the point? So those are the things called as abstract. So today we saw what? We saw exception handling, right? We saw all the keywords of exception handling, and then we also saw what? We also saw abstract classes. Okay. The next topic we'll see in next lecture is interfaces. Okay. We'll see all this in the next class. Fine. Any doubts till now? Please do let me know. Yes, any doubts in this? Please do let me know. Okay, I can see Manish has asked a question. What is a legacy class? So, see, legacy classes are basically associated with the collection frameworks. Okay, what had happened is that before Java version 1.2, collection framework classes did not exist, right? So there are some legacy classes and interfaces which are used to hold the objects in that scenario when you are implementing, we are dealing with that kind of program or that kind of project which was made before that Java version 1.2. So there are various legacy classes like dictionary, hash table, vector, stack. There is a legacy interface called enumeration, right? So this did not, this earlier versions of Java did not include this collection frameworks. So these are various collection classes like hash table, vector, and stack, which can be used, in legacy or projects. Got the point? Any other question, guys? Okay, so I will stop over here, and if you have any doubts, you can ask.